surely Sam and Rabbi Asher. I'm not in my comfort zone, you know. I do not have the trenches of Ammunition Hill. I do not have the brilliant displays that assist me always annually to talk about the story of the Six-Day War. It is not by no means going to be an historic lesson or a lecture. I'm going to try to convey to you a story of a family, a story of my father, the story of myself, trying to squeeze into this half an hour I'm going to talk to you, 53 years of my life, trying to understand my path, trying to understand my father, who was killed practically 56 meters from the place I'm working on a daily basis in Jerusalem. My father was killed while paving the way to his friends into Ammunition Hill, which is considered until today to be one of the toughest battles the paratroopers ever faced past 70 years, 72 years of our existence. And the beginning of the story is the Six-Day War, a very famous war. And I'm not going to talk to you about all the fronts and all the whereabouts of the battles. I'm going to talk to you about something much deeper, because I was not always a 53-year-old mensch that is going to talk to you and throw amazing words to the air. At the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I was running in the trenches of Ammunition Hill, playing hide and seek. Big words like camaraderie, bravery, commitment to a mission, Jerusalem, Har HaBayit, Kotel, meant nothing to me. Same as simple naive words like father and death. I lost my father when I was 10 months. I did not know my father. But what I'm going to share with you is a lifetime of trying to understand the minute my father took me in his arms, sniffed my head for the last time, gave me to my grandfather, saying to him, "God, my son," and live for the uncertainty of war and death for the greater good. I remember at the age of 8, I was angry with my father. Why did he leave me? And in order to understand the context we are talking about, we are all Jewish people. We are a nation that worship life and peace and not death and war. This is not a Spartan nation. And while trying to understand and to reveal layer after layer who was my father, what is the legacy of the Liberators of Jerusalem, I think nowadays I can sum up everything to talk to you about human beings and not about brave heroes. They were brave heroes, but 99% of their lives, these guys, the Liberators of Jerusalem, were civilians. I don't know if you know it, but in Israel, whenever a full-scale war falls on our heads, the majority of the fighting units are not the enlisted young guys you see all over the streets of Israel. IDF, it is the best army in the world, or we tend to think so, but they are not enough to collide against 4 Arab armies. Whenever a full-scale war falls on our heads, 80% of the fighting personnel units are carpenters, grocery shop owners, lecturers, rabbis, fresh grooms, proud young fathers, who have to make this unbelievable shift in their mind, the shift I'm looking for all my life to understand. Becoming from a lover to a combat engineer specialist, from a carpenter to a tank commanding officer. This is the context. And this is Israel. And this is the beginning of my story when the army knocked on the door of my father. And I will now upload some photos that will enable you to close the gap of thousands of miles between you guys and myself, but it is going to be from my heart to your heart. I hope it will be understood. Just nod if you see. You see everything? Okay. So Six-Day War, a short version of a long historical lesson. 2 weeks before the Six-Day War started, President Nasser, the mighty president of the Egyptian nation, was screaming all over his available media. No smartphones, no new media, only radios and television. "I'm going to come to Israel leading all the Arab armies, and I'm going to kill you Jews. I'm going to throw you to the sea, and I'm going to finish whatever Hitler could not do." 2 weeks before the Six-Day War started, Israel nation felt like on the edge of annihilation. People felt a second Holocaust is going to fall on our heads. People were terrified. Our brave, amazing government decided not to wait until the last minute and launched a preemptive strike. And our aviators flew very low over the Sinai Peninsula and demolished all the airplanes, combat airplanes of the Egyptian army on the ground. This was the beginning. And soon enough, Israel was facing 3 fronts, 4 Arab armies. and achieved something unbelievable. I showed you here on the map the resolution as from the 1967 map until the map of Jerusalem, because the beginning of the Six-Day War, Israel was a very narrow state, and Jerusalem was on the end of the corridor resulted from the 48 Independence War, when two generals at the end of the Independence War decided to chop Jerusalem to two cities. With a pen on the map, 8.5 kilometers, Jerusalem was divided to two cities, 19 years. This was the status quo in Jerusalem that nobody wanted to interfere with. And when the war started, nobody dreamed that within 2.5 days they are going to reunite Jerusalem and return to the Holy Mountain, to the West Wall, to the Jewish quarters. But this is what happened. And soon enough, after this preemptive strike began, all our reservists were needed. And when the enlisted young army was rushing down towards the Sinai Peninsula in the south and north to the Golan Heights to confront the Syrians, the only guys, the only battalions, the only brigades Israel nation could deploy to Jerusalem were 3 brigades of civilians 2 weeks before, 3 brigades of reservists, the Jerusalem Brigade, the Ariel Brigade, and surely the Paratroopers Brigade. And on the north side of Jerusalem lies Ammunition Hill, which, as I said, was my childhood playground. This is a position, a strategic position, that whoever holds it can hold anybody that wants to bring the army from Ramallah, from Jericho, everybody that wants to penetrate from Jaffa, anybody that wants to reach the old city or Mount Scopus need to take over this ridge. And this is what the Central Command commanding officer understood, and they deployed there the paratroopers. Ammunition Hill until today is intact. We left it exactly as it was when 120 paratroopers stormed inside dead of night, 5th of June, 1967, into this unbelievable, brilliant maze of 300 meters of trenches and 40 bunkers. Waiting for them, there were the Bedouins, the elite commander units of the legionnaires of King Hussein, and 4.5 hours face-to-face battle resulted in an epic battle that is considered until today to be the pivotal battle that led the way to reunite Jerusalem. But as I told you 53 years ago, I was running here playing hide and seek. It was an amazing place for me to try to know myself. I did not understand what is my path. But something brilliant happened there. The paratroopers gave us an amazing lesson. They never left this place. And the reason I was running in these trenches is because until today, they consider this to be the heart of their legacy. And I was not brought there to sniff the blood or to avenge my father or to understand the battlefield whereabout. I was brought there because they were there for us. And try to understand the beginning of my life. After 2 weeks of preparations, on the edge of annihilation, there was an epic triumph. Tens of thousands of Jewish people were dancing in front of the Kotel. All over the Jewish diaspora, people were dancing, chanting, praying, crying, thinking that this was nothing less than a miracle. Israel within 6 days did something not even one other nation on the modern era could achieve. We tripled the size of Israel. We changed the Middle East the way we know it today. We returned to the Holy Mountain, to the Jewish quarters, to the Kotel. It was something unbelievable. Now, try to understand. Edge of annihilation, the other side, an epic triumph and celebrations. In the middle, stuck unattended, 182 bereaved families that were left behind. It was a justified celebration period, but nobody, not the army, the Minister of Defense, neither the government could deal with the bereaved families. And the only guys who decided not to wait for anybody and to deal with the families were the comrades in arms of my father. The paratroopers who lost 100 of these 182 guys were already a big, big family when the war started. These guys knew each other from the Palmach, from the Haganah, from the Independence War, from the 56 Sinai War, from the kibbutzes, from the fields. The wives knew each other, the parents knew each other. And within 2.5 days of the fighting over Jerusalem, 100 of their friends were lost. They could not wait. And a day after the war ended, they decided spontaneously they're going to leave the celebrations. There was a very famous meeting at the apartment of the doctor of the brigade, Dr. King. They admired him because he saved lives along with his medics and doctors 2 and 3 and 4 days ago, and they divided the families. And a day, I went with my father. A day after the war ended, there was a knock on the door of my mother. And 10 salt of the earth, amazing, brilliant paratroopers, the idols of my life, were knocking on the door. They entered inside. They were now once again civilians. My mother, she was in a state of shock. She hardly remembers anything. She lost the love of her life 4 days ago. I was a 10-month baby. What do I know? They pointed at her and said to her in so many words, maybe Alonchik, my nickname, lost a father. Here, 10 alternative guys, fathers, you name it. He will never step alone anymore. Now, these words, this vow, resonated in dozens of other apartments all over Israel. And this promise led me to be raised on the laps of amazing Israeli idol figures, replacing my father without asking anything in return. Being the puzzle of how might my father look like, small gestures, mimic values I collected from them, imitating them, trying to know how might my father look like. And they were one heck of a bunch of fellows to be related to. And their story is my story. And trying to know myself and to know my father is the sum up of what I'm going to share with you. But to start from the beginning of my life, this is me and my father. And when the war started, there was a knock on his door, and he was supposed to be once again a combat engineer specialist of the paratroopers. He was the one who was supposed to penetrate into the minefields and lead this first assault, and there he was killed. And for 2 weeks of preparation, he was one of the first officers to know everything which is going to happen. And after 2 weeks of preparation, they were supposed to paraglide behind enemy lines in front of the Egyptians. But when the aviators demolished the Egyptian aviators, the paratroopers were not needed in the south. So 2,000 of them, mounted buses and 120 buses came to Jerusalem. Nobody told them they're going to become part of history. It was a great mission: block the Jordanians, prevent our guards of Mount Scopus to be butchered, and that's it. When my father understood on the morning of 5th of June that he's going to war, he decided to do something unbelievable. He decided to leave everything. He had 5 hours. Everything in Israel is so small. He knew that my mother came along with me to stay at my grandmother apartment in Rishon LeZion, 20 minutes from the orchards of Tel Nof and Rehovot, in which his guys were preparing to be deployed to Jerusalem. He had a brief time to do something unbelievable. He took a jeep along with his 2 soldiers, and out of nowhere, there was a knock on the door in Rishon LeZion, and my father popped up in the apartment. And my mother, she said to me, it was a shock. They were all terrified, and suddenly your father pops out of nowhere, wearing his camouflage uniforms. You see behind me, this is his uniform I'm guarding all my life. He took you in his arms. He didn't give any explanation, nothing. He sniffed your head like he loved to do. He walked towards your grandfather, and my grandfather says to me, your father approaches me, he gives you to me, and he says, guard my son. I saw in his eyes, he wanted to say something, but it was a secret. He couldn't say anything. He just said, guard my son. And as fast as they came, they left without giving any explanation. And my mother said, your father looked intact. He looked big and impressive, like nobody can touch him. At the end of this day, my father was killed. And this is the last photo I have for my father, whom I'm trying to know all my life. And as I told you, his friends, many of them are alive until today. Some of them are around the age of 80. Never forgot the promise they gave, the vow they gave to our grandfathers and grandmothers and to our mothers. And they led me all my life. And I'm talking about the resolution of elementary school. 3 classes in Rishon LeZion, I was the only one without a father. And when the kids were supposed to bring their father to talk about his career, I had nobody. But there was a joke in my class, how lucky you are. Every year you bring some brilliant another figure. These guys you see on the photos, some of them became high-ranking officers, parliament members, They never stopped supporting Israel, but they gave me an amazing lesson and they were present in my life without asking anything in return. You guys, you need to understand, these guys gave Jerusalem to the entire Jewish nation without asking anything in return. In order to make this miracle, they implemented amazing values like camaraderie and bravery and leadership and brotherhood. Those values were implemented 2 days after the war ended while making a decision to approach the families, showing us, giving us an amazing lesson to share with you, showing you that all these values do not belong to the IDF, do not belong to wartime, do not belong only to the trenches of Ammunition Hill. They belong to any human being who choose to implement them. And this was the beginning of my life. And these guys, as complicated as our questions became, they met us, they confronted us, and they shared us the big story. I'm talking about, they came to my bar mitzvah and they came to join me to the army and they came to my wedding and they came to when my wife gave birth to the first daughter. Whenever I needed them, they were there for us. Not only for me, but for my brothers and sisters forever, the orphans of Ammunition Hill and the 6-Day War. And about 13 years ago, they came to me in this truthful way that led me all my life. They said to me, Alonchik, you are 40 years old. You heard the stories, the exaggeration, the myth. You know English better than we do. You know new media. Tomorrow we are not healed. We are so old. Please come under the stretcher and become our voice. Make sure that Ammunition Hill legacy will be relevant for the future generation. We had one condition, that they will come along with us to carry on the mission. And 32 of them, in this humble way that led us all our life, became devoted volunteers at Ammunition Hill. Nowadays, whoever comes to Ammunition Hill can see them, can listen to them and to their legacy. Some of them do sing and play. Some of them speak German, French, English, Polak, surely Hebrew. They are really amazing fellows. But while talking to you about their legacy, I see that there are, Rebecca, there's also women here. So I'm going to share another layer with you. Because bravery is not only a chauvinistic issue, bravery has to do with other figures in my life. And I'm going to talk to you also about my mother. She is the rock of my life. She is still alive until today. I love her so much. I didn't know what I loaded on her shoulders because I started a story when I was 10 months. Now I'm 53. My father summoned me to Ammunition Hill when I was 40. Another age so meaningful to understand the bigger story in Israel is the age of 17 when the army knocks on my door. 18 behind the corner, most of us go to the army. What are you going to do? The nation asked me. I wanted to be a paratrooper. I was raised by amazing figures. I wanted to know my father all my life. I wanted to sweat like him. It was my part. I was connected to such an amazing legacy. I wanted to be a paratrooper, but Israel is such an amazing nation. If somebody falls during the war, his successor, younger brother or son, cannot go by definition, by law, to a combat unit. And I never urge people to go to combat units and to be fighters. Serve your nation any way you can, but I wanted to do it, but by law I couldn't do it. It was prevented from me because Israel nation protects the bereaved families. The only option for me to fulfill my destiny was to approach my legal guardian. There's an annex in the law that allows my legal guardian to sign a waiver. And you guys, 99% of our lives, the legal guardians are the mothers, the humble, dear, sweet, brave mothers of us that are behind the scenes all these years. My mother did not fight, but at the age of 17, when I was coming to her as an egoistic young guy who wants to fulfill his destiny, I did not even remotely start to understand what I'm loading on my mother's shoulders. Mommy, there's an option for you to sign this waiver. In other words, I didn't say it to her, I'm saying it to you. Mommy, gamble your sanity in my life and say to the nation, I know he does not have to do it. He paid the price already, but it's on me, take my son. And a mother, at the age of 17, I will never forget me confronting my mother, pleading her, begging her, Mommy, please. A mother that looks into her son's eyes in such an Israeli, Jewish, unique situation, saying to him, if this is what you want to do, I'm going to sign the waiver. She becomes this instant as brave as each and every one of the guys I can talk to you about for hours. But in order to understand to the full extent what I'm talking about, the heart of our nation, a mother that looks into her son's eyes in a situation like this, saying to him, I do not care. Hate me, do not speak to me ever again. You will be alive, I do not sign the waiver. She is as brave. And in Israel, a non-Spartan nation by definition, we do not judge a mother that said yes. We do not judge a mother that said no. It's all the same. It's okay. We need to protect our mothers. And I will never forget me being summoned before the army to an office of a lawyer on behalf of the Minister of Defense, who has to see that my mother, being of sound mind and body, is not being intimidated or forced or manipulated. I admit we manipulated our mothers emotionally any way we could because we were egoistic. We wanted to do it. And they were the obstacle, the condition. And this lawyer looks into my mother's eyes, saying to her, Ginat, are you absolutely sure you know what you're doing? And my mother said in the jaws like this, she hated every second, yes. And before signing this waiver, she said something that I'm going to share with you at the end. And indeed, she sent me to 5 years of which she could not sleep very well. I ran as far away as I could. I wanted to be of service to my nation. I wanted my fathers to be proud of me. I wanted my father to be proud of me. And indeed, I became a paratrooper, and I was joining the Special Elite Commander Unit of the paratroopers, Sayeret Tzanchanim. I was the first for my crew to join officers course. And after the first Intifada was finished, and I was deeply involved in there, I was one of the founding officers of Magellan. This is another elite commander units of the IDF. We are the guys, don't tell anybody, jumping behind enemy lines with special lasers, targeting targets who do not know what hit them. Believe it or not, my father was here all these years. His figure, my fathers were behind me, guarding me all my life without even knowing it, because I wanted to know him through any possible layer. Now, at the age of 40, 13 years ago, when I was brought to Ammunition Hill to become an educator as well, and when JNF USA started to be involved, they gave us the means and the options to elevate this place and to not only focus on the trenches, but to build state-of-the-art modern facilities that will enable us to mediate the story efficiently to kids and to youngsters from all over the world and from Israel. We received the budget to make a movie about our fathers, 10 minutes movie. And I had an excuse 13 years ago to approach my uncle, saying to him, do you still have anything of my father left? So I'll be able to share it and add it to the movie. And he said to me, where were you all these years? I have a special box for you. He went to his storage and he came back with the box. And he opened the box. And I'm going to share with you something very unique, because at the age of 40, I saw his passport and I saw so many things he wrote, letters, but I saw another thing. When my father left the apartment at the 5th of June, he was very emotional. His driver is still alive until today. He said to me, Father, I know him. He was my brother. He was my friend. He was my commanding officer. I saw that he's being very emotional. He took out of his pocket a special postcard, army postcard, and he wrote on his knee on the way back to the army, a letter to you. This letter came 4 days after my father was killed. I was 10 months. My mother was in a state of shock. When my uncle saw the letter content, he said he could not show it to my mother. He concealed it and he forgot about it. And when I came at the age of 40, he gave me the box and I saw all the papers and the artifacts of my father. And then I saw something I needed to wait all my life to see. On the way back to the army, 5th of June, 1967, he wrote to me, surely in Hebrew, these words: to my sweet and kind son and my love, hello and many kisses. It seems to me that it's coming. It couldn't have been helped and we must fight. I came over yesterday but couldn't say anything. Alone, be a man and take care of your mom, grandpa and grandma. Meidele, this is how he called my mother. Be a fighter and take care of everything and everyone until we shall return, and we will return fast. See you soon and lots of kisses, Rami. Try to imagine me at the age of 40, after trying to know my father all my life, reading this, the last will of my father. I was crying like I never cried before. Everything burst from inside, because while trying to know my father, this is the layer I was looking for all my life. To show you today, so many years afterwards, in the 7th of June, 1967, 2 days after my father was killed, his friends were reaching the Kotel, that my father was not a machine of war. He was a human being. He needed us. He wanted us to be part of this. My mother, she's a very proud grandmother. She's alive until today. I hope I was really taking care of her. But this is something I will cherish all my life, this letter that showed me again and again and again what are the motivations. I will never know if I was a burden on my father's shoulder, if I was an asset. If he thought about me when he ran in front of the soldiers penetrating Ammunition Hill. But I believe that we are all connected. We are part of the overall motivation they had to create such a miracle of liberating Jerusalem. Now, there was another thing in this box. There was a diary that my father wrote, because my father, I didn't know this until then, tried to mount any peak in the world he could possibly reach. He was the first unofficial backpacker of Israel. And in the early 60s, he climbed the highest mountain of the Alps, Mont Blanc. He reached the peak of Fujiyama in Japan. And when he was deployed to Ethiopia to help build the Imperial Army of Haile Selassie on behalf of the IDF, somebody told him there's a mountain in the heart of Africa. The name is Kilimanjaro, 6,000 meters high, one of the 7 peaks of the world. And when he heard about it, the first option he had, he climbed Kilimanjaro. And while wanting to know my father, at the age of 40, I had a resolution. I want to know the same sunrise my father wrote in his diary. I wanted to know my father. I wanted to know the drive that led this generation to do whatever they did. And having 3 amazing daughters, this is the little one in orange, she's 16, but the little ones, this one is 25, this one is 27. They were both in the IDF, in the army. One of them is an officer, Amit is an officer. She's a lieutenant now. Noam was serving as the security officer of El Al. She was deployed to Milan for 2 years. They are all 3 very feminine, but they wanted to know their legacy. They wanted to be useful part of their nation. And about a year ago, I said to them, would you like to come with me to make a closure with your grandfather? I want to know him. And I want you to come along with me. And to my surprise, they decided to come with me. These are the photos I found in the box of my father in 1962 in the Kilimanjaro mountain. I wanted to walk along the same path he walked, and I wanted to know him while looking at this sunrise. And about a year ago, we started the preparation, and it was very difficult. There was not even one mountain in Israel we did not climb, but everything is so low. And along this path, along this journey in Israel, we were about 16 other guys came along with us. 2 Rami Valds, who were named after my dead father, 2 relatives of mine, 3 generations of paratroopers who said, if you are going to make a closure with our friend and with the paratroopers and with this legacy, we are going to join you. And about 6 months ago, a mission of 19 people, 3 generations of paratroopers, 5 of them are orphans of Ammunition Hill, decided to make a closure. It was one of the toughest challenge we could ever face in our lives. Nothing could be compared to it. You can see my daughter after 3 days looking at the camera as if saying, Father, what the hell were you thinking? No oxygen, freezing condition, pouring rains, very difficult altitude, but we kept on climbing on the footsteps of this amazing legacy we stand for today. And after 5 days, this is the sunrise we saw. It was something unbelievable. From 6,000 meters, it's not a round circle sun. It's like somebody lit all the horizon. It was the 15 minutes of amazing gazing at the creation, trying to understand what my father felt when he was there looking at this sunrise. It was something really unbelievable. And an hour afterwards, we reached this very famous sign on the peak of Kilimanjaro, 2 Army Vals, 2 of my daughters, another 12 paratroopers, some of them relatively old. And I must have waited a lifetime to share this with you, because I brought with me all the way in my pouch this. This is the special sign of Ammunition Hill along with the Israeli flag. And I took it from my pouch with my freezing fingers. I stuck it on this frozen wood along with stickers from all over the world of missions from Bulgaria and from Greece and from Belgium and from United States. I stuck it here, and I was very emotional, and from my guts, something came out. And I said there, so remote from Israel, from Jerusalem, from the political disputes, from the army issues, so close to God. I said, Abba, עכשיו אני יודע. Daddy, now I know. And everybody started crying, because everybody knew something that this mountain could offer us. Really, to understand what these guys gave us was we needed to come to this remote place and stick this thing. And we opened all the flags we brought along with us, the paratroopers. This is 2 Ramis and my daughters hugging me. No oxygen. We had only 12 to 13 minutes that we were supposed to be there. This is the slot you are allowed to, and we had to go down. We took out all the flags, paratroopers flag, Israeli flag, Ammunition Hill flag, all the battalions, because we wanted to share this with everybody else. And one of the guys who came along with us, and this is the surprise I'm going to sum up the story with, was Yaki Chetz. He received the Medal of Valor in Ammunition Hill. He is one of my fathers. And when he heard that we are going to make this closure to honor his friends, dead and alive, he said, Alon, I'm going to come with you. My first instinct was to say to him, Lucky, you're too old. You need to be prepared. But this guy runs until today half marathons. And he says, on behalf of this legacy, I'm going to come along with you. And he showed us an amazing lesson. At the age of 74, he climbed along with us, the young fellow, all the way up. And on behalf of my father and his friends, he came there and he says, I'm here to show you that as long as you believe in yourself, you can fulfill any dream. And the closure I'm going to share with you is that when my mother said to me she's going to sign the waiver, she said to me, I'm going to sign on one condition. Please promise me not to be as stupid and as brave as your father. Listen to what comes from the guts of a Yiddish mama. She's not an educator, she's not an historian, but she said something. She made me give her a promise. I could promise her anything when she said to me, okay. And you need to understand, you are experienced fellows. You know that histories of nations are being carved by people who are walking between stupidity and bravery. And my lesson to share with you today is that you do not need to be on the edges to make a difference. Not to be complete stupid or complete brave. Leave your comfort zone and you can make history. I don't know if he was stupid or brave. His wife, Yaki Chetz's wife, thinks he was stupid to come along with us, but he made a difference and he gave us something unbelievable to share with you. And indeed, this is my father in the clouds. I made a camouflage of me and him on the same mountain. My daughter is between my legs over there. Yaki Chetz in the red comes until today to Ammunition Hill. He teaches kids not how to fight, not how to sacrifice their lives. He teaches kids and made them understand that they can be brave tomorrow morning in the youth movement, in their schools. Yes, Corona, no COVID-19. You do not need to wait for wartime. You do not need to sacrifice your lives to become inspiring person to your community. And they believe him, they believe us. And indeed, Ammunition Hill nowadays is a very brilliant place that shares the stories through any state-of-the-art modern facility you could possibly imagine. 3D displays and special animations, everything is available, and this place is alive. When we started 13 years ago, 70,000 people came annually. Now we are surpassing 400,000 people every year. They are coming from all over the world to understand the heart of our nation, not only of sacrifice and triumph, but also of human being values. And this is the widest common denominator JNF wanted to share with you guys. And as far as we had our visions and dreams and goals, we had to have the means, and JNF allowed it to us. And when we speak about values, these are the values that can help your communities to become stronger and stronger because we understood at Ammunition Hill that we are one people, one nation. A brilliant commemoration hall, which is something I'm very proud to be one of the founding initiators. I don't know how to say it in better words. Ammunition Hill was elevated about 6 years ago from a national worthy site to an international worthy site because we launched the Jewish Combatants Honoring Wall. When people come from all over the world, Jewish people, saying to us, the values you are talking about are the values of our father or uncle or grandfather who fought on behalf of the United States Army, Canadian Army, Australian Army, Russian Army. Can he be cherished here? And this wall today has already almost 485 names of Jewish people who fought armies on behalf of their nation, implementing the same values we stand for. And this wall is said to be the second important wall in Jerusalem. This one is the West Wall, and this is the Jewish Combatants Honoring Wall. Nobody planned it initially, and the evolution of this wall is something unbelievable because this wall at Ammunition Hill shows the entire world the Jewish people are not only book writers and rabbis and great finance minds and high-tech brilliant minds whenever their nation needed them, as from the First World War, Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, they were of service to their nation. And this is the widest common denominator we are presenting at Ammunition Hill. If you have any relative that served the United States Army, he should be on this wall. And the unveiling events are something really emotional, and it really brought Ammunition Hill to an international level. And behind me, on the wall, this is a replica of the flag that on the 7th of June, today, 1967, the paratroopers hanged the Israeli flag. They received it before the war started by a grandmother who met them at the west side of Jerusalem, saying to them, I was thrown away along with my family from the Jewish quarters by the Jordanians in 1948. I took one flag with me. If you will return to the West Wall, please hang this flag on the wall on behalf of the entire nation. This guy you see here is one of my fathers, Yoram Zamush. He took this flag for 2.5 days. He fought on Jerusalem with this flag in his rear pouch. And then when the war ended, along with 8 of his soldiers, he hanged this flag. And when we opened the new museum, he brought the flag for eternal preservation at Ammunition Hill. I asked him 2 years ago to sign the same words he wrote on the flag on my behalf because I wanted to have a flag like this of my own. It's written here, דגל ישראל, מונף על הכותל המערבי, בהר הבית בירושלים, בידי חיילי פלוגה א' מגדוד 71 של חטיבת הצנחנים 55, היום יום רביעי, כ"ח באייר התשכ"ז, בשעה 10:15, חטיבת הצנחנים משחררי ירושלים. We are the paratroopers. A platoon, 71st Battalion are now hanging this flag on the West Wall. This is a smaller replica, but this is the handwriting, exact writing of what he wrote. When you come to Israel, come over to Ammunition Hill, you can see the actual flag that is here to remind us that we will never leave Jerusalem again. And this is the day, because of the COVID-19, I could not pay homage the last Memorial Day, Independence Day, Jerusalem Day to my father. The first time ever, I could not come to Mount Herzl Army Cemetery to pay homage to my father. And I must tell you that raising his legacy today with you guys, you are the best alternative I could possibly imagine to myself to make you understand who was my father, what is the legacy he stands for. And I will go to the cemetery. I will go there because every year I go there, making a closure with my father, talking to him, saying to him, Daddy, Bar Mitzvah, Daddy, I joined the army. Daddy, I'm a paratrooper. Daddy, I'm an officer. Daddy, I fell in love, I'm getting married. Daddy, I'm older than you today. At the age of 32, I came there to say it. This year I could not go. Small corona, small COVID-19, it will pass. But being able to use the Zoom and to talk to you guys is really, really something very meaningful for me to share with you. It does sound better in Hebrew. It does sound better when I'm with you at Ammunition Hill, but things will pass. And please remember that you are part of an amazing nation. You have unique blood in your veins, so have patience, take care of yourself, and everything will become a memory. And we'll be able to meet sometime soon, maybe in your turf, maybe in Israel. I can talk for hours more, but this is my story. And if you have questions, I'm available. Thank you for listening to me. I hope I was understood, you know.
Alon, you were very well understood. Toda rabah. I can't imagine a better way to commemorate June 6, 1967, that apart from being in Ammunition Hill, than with you here today. Thank you. I was asked by Sam Richardson with the Jewish National Fund with JNF to facilitate the end of today because Rabbi Asher had to leave, and I almost couldn't. My breath was taken away. Your story, your life is a magnificent portrayal of a small part of the Jewish people. Thank you very much for taking your time today. I wish we could be with you at Ammunition Hill right now, but since we can't, and since you can't be there due to the virus, thank you for spending your time with us and bringing us your story. We'd like for anyone who has questions, we're a small enough group that you can unmute yourself and ask any questions of Alon that you have. Does anyone have a question? Limor.
Hi. My family lost a cousin, my mother's cousin, in the 6-Day War, and his name was Yaakov Leibovich. And I'm wondering, is there any way that I can learn his story? Is there a group there that has a journal that has a history of how other people lost their family members?
Ammunition Hill is the heart of the, we collect all the stories. You have me for you now. So take my email, send me his name. I assure you within a couple of days, I'll give you everything I know about your cousin, for sure, no problem.
It's wonderful. 3 months ago, I went to Israel with my daughter and I connected with his family. And it's part of my life, and thank you. Your story is special, and your father would be so proud. I look at you and I see my father.
Thank you so much.
You have the same face as my family members, and it's very comforting, but your story is very special.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Limor. Does anyone else have a question or something to say to Alon?
This is Vicky. I would just like to say thank you. I was so moved by your story and by all the lessons you taught us from it. And next time I go to Israel, I will definitely go to Ammunition Hill.
Thank you.
The first time I was there was nothing inside. I'll never forget, it was hot and there was no other buildings. But it left an impression on me, and I've been back several times since, thank God. Next I'm there, I'll look for you.
When we wanted to reopen the story in a more convenient way, more inspiring way, the government was reluctant to support us. And Katja, one of my fathers, who was the CEO of Ammunition Hill, he met Russell Robinson. And they talked to each other, and this was the beginning of an amazing journey, because when JNF understood that what we do can affect your second and third generation, and bind them, you know, make the bonds to Israel overall story, we began the journey. And I think that the commemoration hall was 100% investment of JNF. The new museum, 51% was JNF, and then the government stepped in. It was a shift because now they understand that we are meaningful for, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs about a year ago came, saw what we did, and decided to officially nominate us as a must-see place like Masada and like the West Wall to 400 official foreign missions that come to Israel. So now the journey rolls on, but indeed, JNF was something very meaningful to our efforts. And we are I'm proud to tell you that we are part of about 24 affiliates all over Israel that do not deal only with trees planting, they deal with water and with the science and with culinary and with the south and the north. We are all connected together thanks to JNF. And during this time of the COVID-19, we all support Israel thanks to JNS, who make all the links in the bonds. We are not competing for, on your hearts. We are now together as one big family. And this is something that made us really part of the overall story and part of you guys. And I'm coming over to United States every now and then, giving lectures, speaking to JCC communities, to high school kids, to Jewish veterans. It's amazing because, you know, understanding that you guys are behind us is part of the power that Israel have. And as long as you are having, we have your back, Israel will prevail, and I really want to thank you for your involvement.